Kia ora koutou, and welcome to the third or fourth of the Pūhau ana te rā presentations and seminars. Come and fill some seats up the front so you're not too far away from the presenter. I'll just make you feel all self-conscious and go quiet as you walk up. Okay, so let's get things underway. Whakatakura hau ki te uru, whakatakura hau ki te toka, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. Ehi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei Māori ora. Ko tēnei te mihi tuatahi ki te atua, tēnā koe te kaihaka. Ko tēnei te mihi tuarua ki papatū anuku, rawa raki nui, tēnā korua. Ko tēnei te mihi ki te whare nei, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. Ko tēnei te mihi ki te mate, moi moi rā, moi rā, moi rā, moi moi rā. Ko tēnei te mihi ki te kanohi ora, kia ora koutou. Ko tēnei te mihi ki te iwi kone, kei tahu, rapawai, waitaha, kathi mamoe, tēnā koutou. And ko tēnei te mihi ki te rupu i te ruma. Le tauira, me te kaiako, ko te mihi i te whakaro me tō mahi, tēnā koutou. Ora rā, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome, let's get started. So I'd like to start off talking a little bit about the admin and get sorted for the day. Then move on to talk a little bit about Pūhau ana te rā. I'll pass the baton over to Caroline to talk a little bit about the Centre for Sustainability and the scholarships that have happened there over the summer. We'll then pass over to Grace, and I think we might not be able to get hold of Craig because he's down in the second room, in the EV room, ready to start at 9:30 with the first online presentations. But if we can get him, he'll talk a little bit about the Ag Innovation presentations. So, admin for today. If we have emergencies, alarms going off, we have to get out of the building, there's several exits, follow the green signs. There's a picture of someone running, it says where to go and what to do. When you get out of the building, we're heading across onto the Union Lawn, and if there's not too much festivities going from the Masters Games, that's where we will gather. Normal thing, if there's a shake, get under the table, hold on, wait till it stops shaking, and then we'll sort things out from there. Bathrooms are out in the corridor there, and there's certainly some downstairs, and may even be some in this corridor here. I think that's all of the admin bits. In terms of the routine for today, we're going to have two separate sessions, and there's a little version of the program up on the whiteboard at the back. I'll put testing my hand-eye coordination here. Yeah, and you see there's two flows. So you get the option either to be in the room here watching this one. Some people have logged in on Zoom, so they might be hearing me online, or you can pop out the room and use the other link on that right-hand column, and that'll let you view the talks that are being presented down in either the EV room or people zooming into that online stream. Yeah, so all the way through, there's two parallel sessions going on. It's the same format. Each session has 3 or 4 summer scholars presenting on their work. We won't do questions during the 15-minute presentations. We will stick pretty tight to the time, and we'll give you the nods from the front here as you're getting close to your time. But once the series of talks are done, then we've got some chairs up here, and the same thing can happen virtually in the other room, where we'll be able to take questions from the audience, and the chair, which should be this morning, Caroline and myself, will be able to facilitate those questions and answers, because all of these talks are really interesting talks. People will want to know more, and we encourage you to ask each other questions as well. Yeah, you're not stitching someone up by asking them a question, you're helping them out, because it's probably something that will help them in their final report as well. Yeah. So that is the plan. Pūhau ana te rā. The phrase means traveling with wind in your sails. Yeah, traveling with sails full of wind. And it links back to when we saw the Climate Change Commission's advice to government, talking about we have ambitious targets and objectives and plans for the future. And if we experience tailwind conditions, that doesn't mean we slack off, it means we get there earlier. Yeah? And to me, that speaks to a lot of the work that undergrads and emerging researchers are doing that isn't necessarily currently being captured well, but certainly adds wind to the sails. So that's the whole point of Pūhau ana te rā and the summer scholarships. And since we started that last year, we also started the journal. So Pūhau ana te rā, the journal. This is where the proceedings from today will all go. And most of you will have seen last year's proceedings, your abstract, who you worked with, who supported it financially, will all go on there, and it goes online. And what I really hope is that many of you also take your final report and submit it for full publication. So I know Demi went through that process last year, yeah, and I think it was quite a positive process, yeah, to get it done, and it gives you a publication to share, which is a really good step on the rung of the ladder along your way. And it just feels good to get it out there and get it recognised, and I think it also gives a good nod to the people who have supported either through supervision or the financial support to make these things happen. Yeah. You're out there fixing real problems. Let's tell people the solutions that you found and get it out there. That's Pūhau ana te rā. And I'll pass over to Caroline. Oh, sorry, I forgot one admin thing, and it's possibly the most important one. There will be morning tea and afternoon tea. Yeah, we'll have a break for lunch, so you can head off and get your lunch. If you want to nip downstairs and get a barista coffee, we have got Again, which is your reusable cups. Yeah, so download the app off of this, get yourself a reusable cup. Let's get some more use of this system. Right. That's my blatant plug.
Kia ora koutou katoa. Ko Caroline Hutchison tōku ingoa, ki te whare wānanga o tākou. Ka rāka hau o te Aotearoa, ahau e mahi ana. No oti puti tōku kāinga, no oti puti ahau. So welcome along everyone, and thanks Ray for a great introduction, and it's so exciting to be here to hear all about your wonderful summer projects. As I said before, I think when you visited us early in the summer, the pizzas and a chat, it really is such a thrill for us to have, you know, all of you wonderful students working alongside us during the summer months. It brings real vibrancy to our centres and our areas of work, so it's wonderful to see the culmination of all your hard work over the summer being presented today. I want to say a huge thanks to Mairi and the team and everyone over at the office who's really done the heavy lifting on bringing everything together today, developing the program, which involves lots of moving parts and lots of herding of cats. So thank you so much to Mairi for doing all of that. So the Centre for Sustainability is, as you know, based across on Castle Street, and we've been around for 22 years. So, you know, we've we're one of the longest lasting research centres on campus. We've evolved in terms of the work that we do over the years, and we've got focus areas and a broad range, a very broad definition of sustainability, all the way from sort of landscapes and culture and values right through to energy and climate and, you know, communities and resilience. So, you know, as people come and go through our centre, because we tend to evolve quite often as research programs finish, our staff are funded by external contracts. So when they finish particular projects, they need to get funded again in order to stay around with us. We're not like tenured academics, which means we're very agile and very, I guess, yeah, you know, we grab opportunities and we work hard on the projects that we have going. We have postgrad students only. We don't tend to do undergraduate research. So we have, you know, somewhere between 20 and 25 masters and PhD students based with us at any one time. Some of them are distance and some are staying, you know, working with us at the centre. And our work is very applied and but also theoretical. So we work at the research policy and practice kind of interface. A lot of the work that we do is very, you know, full of impact in terms of actually leading to real life outcomes, much like the work that's happening in the office as well in that practice area of the sustainability world. So we're really proud of that. We feel that the work that we do has meaning and it actually leads to tangible change. And that's really exciting. It keeps us all highly motivated. The students that we've had working with us over the summer months at the centre have, again, been working on very diverse projects, from, you know, landslides and carbon loss in Fiordland right through to looking at some of our early settlers and their perceptions of landscape. We've got green hydrogen work being done. We're doing some filmmaking, looking at the commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the Dunedin earthquake back in 1974, because we're doing some work with civil defence partners over at the council to try and work on building our seismic awareness, I guess, for the possibility of future earthquakes in Dunedin. So Rhys Latton's been doing some filmmaking to launch the 50th commemoration in April. Hadley's been doing work on stable isotopes and feral cats. So there's a real breadth of work being done, much like the range of projects that you'll all be describing to us today. So we're really looking forward to hearing all about that. I'll be here a little bit, well, definitely this morning. I have to pop in and out a little after that. But what I'd like to finish on is that I hope you've all learnt a lot about yourselves, about the work that you've been doing. It's given you your first step into independent research for many of you. And I hope you've had a great time working alongside your supervisors, and it's given you confidence to move forward into the next stage of your academic career. I think the journal that Ray just described is a huge opportunity for you to get a publication, put it on your CV. It really does make a difference when the likes of me are looking at CVs in future, and we can see that you've actually had a publication from work you've done independently. It's a really, really great first step in the right direction in terms of future work for you. And I really hope that the work you've been involved in has lit a fire for you to carry on working in sustainability research, because we need more people doing this work. It's so critically important. So yeah, please stay involved and come and chat if you want to carry on doing any work. We might be able to help with supervision or with scholarships. As I say, a lot of our work is funded externally, so we have scholarships that come along from time to time. So it's certainly worth having a conversation with our staff if you're interested in carrying on the mahi in that direction. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa, and looking forward to hearing all about your work today. Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou. My name is Grace, and I'm actually in my last 3 months of my PhD with food waste innovation. So I joined Food Waste Innovation at its inception in 2020, and so my kind of role there was establishing the Upcycled Food Lab, which is kind of where we take surplus food and we try and upcycle it to keep it at its highest level. And so now I am part-time managing Food Waste Innovation, and I've also been overseeing some of our summer students, which has been, yeah, it's been a new experience for me, but I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So Food Waste Innovation is a University of Otago research theme. And so we're very multidisciplinary, made up of lots of different researchers and students from all different fields, all across Aotearoa. So our goal essentially is to harness the best scientific evidence to provide effective solutions for the food waste problem that we have here in Aotearoa. So a lot of our work aims to measure that food waste, develop reduction strategies, and apply innovative technologies to change behaviours and work towards a more effective, sustainable future. So the makeup of our theme, we have a steering committee, so that involves Miranda, Phil, and Sheila. They kind of sit at the top, they oversee everything. And then we have our body of associate investigators, principal investigators, and then we have our postgrad students. And now we've kind of been developing the undergrad side of that. So that encompasses the summer students, and we also food science, which is kind of where this theme grew out of. They also have a third year paper that looks at food. It's a 3-1-1 paper looking at food product development. And so we've had a few students through there that have kind of looked into the upcycling of food as a way to reduce food waste. So that's really exciting. So in terms of our summer internship, we've got 8 students. So it's our biggest cohort yet, which is super exciting. And yeah, everyone is looking at food waste related projects, and that ranges from all kinds of different approaches, different aims, different outcomes. So we've got people doing literature reviews, we've got people that have been doing food waste audits in the retirement sector. We've had people doing internships with Auckland City Council, looking at their food waste, their food waste curbside collection rollout, which is awesome. We've had someone looking at workshops as an intervention for changing food waste behaviours. So yeah, it's really diverse and it's super exciting. Yes, I'll stop there. You'll hear from the students, and yeah, I'm just very excited to hear them all speak. And yeah, I think they've done an amazing job, and it's really exciting. We also, I should probably point out, have Eleanor joining us, who is not part of the Food Waste Innovation summer studentship, but she has been doing a project over the summer that falls under Food Waste Innovation, and so she'll be presenting her findings today, and she's also joining us very soon as our latest Food Waste Innovation PhD student, which is really exciting. And lastly, just like to acknowledge the Sustainability Office, Ray, Mairi, for all their work and just inviting us to be here. It's really exciting. I'm looking forward to hearing what everyone else is doing in the sustainability space, obviously a passion of mine. So yeah, that's really exciting. And then also just want to acknowledge our financial sponsors. We had 3 different financial sponsors that fed into our Food Waste Innovation summer studentships, and yeah, their supervisors as well. So cool, thank you.
And the other group that's important to acknowledge is Ag Innovation at Otago as well. So we have Craig Bunt, who's down chairing the online stream at the start, so we can't hear him right now. But they do incredible work in all sorts of aspects of agriculture, and we'll hear some of the fantastic work they're doing. Any Ag Innovation students in the room at the moment? Excellent, really looking forward to hearing that. Yeah. So we've got 10 minutes before we're officially due to start the presentations. I'm just going to get these set up. And because we've probably got people expecting to join us and view online at set times, I don't really want to start out of sync. Okay, yeah. We're just going to sit and listen to that door beeping for 10 minutes. We can shut the door. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Is it that one or is it the? Excellent. It's even quieter. So we'll have a break for 5 minutes, yeah, and then Rebecca, do you want to come and check this is all working for you? So you've got some prep time. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
Oh, did you see that I did the?
We'll jump to that one. You can do it.
I'll just make it here. It's just a little pie graph, but I worked out the overall spend.
Cool. So that the yellow is a spend that has been responded to.
Yes, so I got the from the last year, and then the suppliers involved with that. And the suppliers answered the questionnaire. I went through and I highlighted with them and I copied that their spend data over overall compared to the full sheet from just that 1 year. It was 1.7%. Not worse, like it's not bad. Yeah, for like a first kind of. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Would it be bad if I popped it?
Go for it.
Okay.
Okay, so first session up, we have three presenters. We've got Becca Stewart, who's been looking at modern slavery and or the potential of modern slavery in the university supply chain. We've also got Phoebe Wood, who's been looking at drop for good and creating a manual and a report on how to do that. And we also have Demi Lawrence, who is, where? She's run away. Demi's run away. Yeah, and she's been looking at our sustainability neighbourhood. And if you are presenting, you will see when you've done 10 minutes, I'll hold this up. Yeah, when you've only got 2 minutes left, you'll see me hold this up. When you've run out of time and it's time to get the hell off the stage, you'll see that. And if you keep going, then I'll come and grab you. Yeah, okay, so.
Thank you, Ray. I'm very excited to be presenting first today. Kia ora, my name is Rebecca Stewart and I'm a fourth year law and commerce student at the University of Otago. So this summer I conducted research focused on identifying the risk of modern slavery in the Universities of Otago's supply chains and reporting back to the procurement department on this. My extensive written report will be produced before the end of this month, but I'll be using this presentation as a taster of the results thus far. So this is a brief Okay, sorry, some technical difficulties going on there. So this is a brief overview of how I've structured my research. I'll firstly run you through the background to this issue. I'll then outline the objectives of my research, the methods that I use to collect data, the results of my data collection, and finally, I'll answer how these results can inform the procurement department's processes going forward. Cool. So, to begin with some context, the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment defines modern slavery as broadly reflecting exploitative situations that a person cannot leave due to threats, violence, coercion, deception, and/or abuse of power. This blanket term includes situations of forced labor, debt bondage, forced marriages, slavery, slavery-like practices, and human trafficking. It's named modern because even though these situations have existed all along and continue to arise, slavery in its historical context was considered to be abolished moving into the modern world. So why now? Why is modern slavery an issue now if it's existed all along? Well, in 2019, the New Zealand government ratified the 2014 protocol to the Forced Labour Convention, to the effect that our government is now bound by 28 initiatives in a plan of action to prevent and eliminate modern slavery. One of the main objectives, backed by 5 initiatives in this plan, is to eliminate forced labour, people trafficking, and slavery from supply chains. This is followed by the action to consider introducing legislation requiring businesses to report publicly on transparency in supply chains to help eliminate practices of modern slavery. And New Zealand has subsequently released draft legislation. This is yet to be confirmed and speculated to be at least a couple years out, but we are well behind other member states so far. The earliest legislation released by member states being the UK in 2015, with reporting requirements in the Modern Slavery Act. Then in 2018, Australia released their slightly hardened version, and countries in the EU also followed suit. The trend seems to be that later legislation, which has had the benefit of being informed by the practicalities of these prior acts, is requiring even higher responsibilities. The New Zealand draft legislation seems to be the same in this trend, that it will require reporting, disclosure, and due diligence obligations to be met. Previously, there's been no requirement for New Zealand businesses to actively analyse their supply chains for risk of modern slavery, but these requirements will take sustainable sourcing to a whole nother level. Once this legislation is in force, it will impose varied obligations on small, medium, and large businesses. Large businesses must comply with all obligations. A large business is currently defined as an organisation that generates more than $50 million in annual revenue, and the University of Otago generates a substantial amount more than this cutoff, and will therefore have to comply with the highest level of responsibilities. In anticipation of these responsibilities, my research aims to scope out the current circumstances of our supply chains. My three objectives are identifying the risk of modern slavery in the University of Otago supply chains, to understand what policies and practices our suppliers may already have to ensure against modern slavery, and to understand what our procurement department can do from here. In my research, I conducted two different methods of data collection. The first was interviews with experts, and the information gained from speaking to these experts, both in the law and in supply chain management, helped to inform my survey questions and also helped me to analyse the key findings of my results. The second method was a supplier questionnaire. So once my interviews were completed, this was sent out to all 9,412 suppliers to the University of Otago. 1,008 suppliers started this questionnaire, and there were 279 successful completions. Before I delve further into the results of the survey, it's important to have a look at how representative this data is. So to grasp how representative my sample is, I looked at 1 year of total expenditure across all suppliers and all departments in the university. I used the time period of July 2022 to June 2023, but something to keep in mind when considering how representative this sample is that specific expenditure will vary from year to year. So this time period was used because it was the most recent data available and therefore presumably the most accurate to our current operations. So suppliers making up 1.7% of total expenditure in this annual period responded to this questionnaire, and their responses are the data analysed in this research. That leaves suppliers making up 98.3% of total expenditure unaccounted for. And although this is a really great start for preliminary research, future research would benefit from a bigger sample. Although the legislation will obligate us to conduct our own conclusive research on modern slavery risk in our supply chains, the survey included a direct question asking the suppliers whether there's a risk of modern slavery in their supply chain. And the responses to this helped me to understand how advanced our suppliers are in their own modern slavery investigations. So the majority of suppliers state that there is no modern slavery risk in their supply chains. Looking through the data, this is explained by the nature of these suppliers. They tend to either provide basic and easily traceable products, direct services, or are sole traders or the like. Many suppliers are unsure about the risk of modern slavery in their supply chains, and a few suppliers recognize that there is a risk of modern slavery in their supply chains. It's important to assess the risk of modern slavery independently, particularly with the high level of uncertainty in the responses to this question.
And this will involve a weighted analysis of a number of factors, the key identified ones being country, level of expenditure, and industry. So what practices are already in place? For the most part, the university already knows which countries our direct suppliers operate within, but I also asked our suppliers to select which continents their tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 suppliers operate in, with the option to select unsure if they didn't know. The general takeaway from those answers was that our supply chains reach all over the world, for a number of supply chains that even extended to Antarctica. As you can see on this infographic, the largest number of tier 2 suppliers are located in Australasia, and the smallest number of tier 2 suppliers are located in Antarctica. Because of this global variety, and because we already know that there are a large number of links in our supply chains located in Australia, I expected a large number of our suppliers to already be reporting entities under the Australian modern slavery legislation. And surprisingly, this questionnaire returned that only 9% of the responding suppliers currently are. However, significantly more than that 9% did have some form of modern slavery practices or policies in place. 36% of suppliers have a whistleblowing regime in place to encourage reporting modern slavery concerns. 64% do not. And of those 64%, 11% intend to develop such a whistleblowing regime. 27% of suppliers state that staff in their organisation are already trained on how to identify, assess, and address modern slavery risks. 73% state otherwise, but again, of those 73%, 29% of suppliers intend on training staff on modern slavery concerns. Overall, these are really great numbers, and it's encouraging to see that a number of suppliers that don't have these practices currently are intending on developing them. Some further practices that our suppliers have in place are written policies or procedures referring to modern slavery. So 27% of our suppliers have these, 73% do not, and then also 26% of suppliers have some form of action plan in place to respond to risks of modern slavery in their supply chain, should evidence indicating modern slavery arise. This is very positive news. 0%, so not a single one of the responding suppliers have had their own organisation or any stakeholders involved in their organisation investigated in relation to breaches of modern slavery legislation. Based on this research, I will be proposing 4 recommendations of varying demands to the university, and these will be explicated in my full written report, but for the sake of this presentation, these are the 4 options. So there's option 0, which is to continue operating as we are until the legislation is finalised and enforced. There's option 1, which involves complying with future legal requirements as they're set out in the draft legislation currently. Option 2, which includes option 1 and additionally any foreseen graduated requirements. So that includes due diligence requirements. And option 3, which involves going above and beyond to do everything we possibly can to eradicate risk of modern slavery from our supply chain. Modern slavery is a complex issue, particularly for organisations with complex supply chains, such as ours. So this research really is the tip of the iceberg, but it will provide a base understanding in the University of Otago context. And these are some sources that I referenced in this presentation. Thank you for your time. Ngā mihi.
Thanks, Becca. That was fantastic. And I will just get the next presentation, if I can find the mouse.
Amazing. Thank you. Cool. Sorry. Okay, so kia ora. I'm Phoebe. I'm a 4th year student studying history and law. I work as a titikura for the Sustainability Office throughout the year, and my role is down at Te Oraka in a student thrift shop. Okay, this definitely is not a good start. Sorry. Okay, so this summer I've been working on a project that aims to reduce waste created by student flooding. So How to Drop for Good is a living document that's aimed to guide other universities through the process of setting up an end of term reuse scheme. Great service, thank you, Ray. Cool. So these are the contents for today's presentation. So I'll give a quick overview of my research method. I'll then talk a little bit about the problem with student flooding waste and some of the existing solutions overseas. I'll talk through the process of designing a reuse scheme, which I guess is the main part of my guide, and we'll conclude with some discussion on the future of Drop for Good here in Dunedin. So my research was mostly conducted through interviews and a couple of surveys, but I started the project with a literature review where I read up on the circular economy and looked at what other universities were currently doing to deal with the issues with student flooding waste. So the surveys I conducted were on the Otago Sustainability Instagram, and one was sent out to volunteers at Drop for Good last November. And these were to evaluate the successes and potential areas for improvement in Drop for Good. And lastly, my interviews were conducted with a series of experts in zero waste and community engagement. And it's insights from these interviews that inform the recommendations in the guide. Cool. Okay. So the linear economy encourages a culture of disposal rather than reuse. And when talking to experts in zero waste, they mostly attributed the linear thinking of tertiary students, I guess Dunedin tertiary students, to these 3 main factors here. So firstly, seasonality. The year-on-year move, one participant saying isn't really good for waste. So moving between flats varying in size is what creates surplus flooding goods. And then there's the situation with limited transport. So with majority of Dunedin students coming from out of town, the question of what to do with these extra goods when moving flats is a problem. And then there's the cycle of having limited money. So going out, buying cheap things in the first place, and then it being perceived as easier to dump them if necessary at the end of the year. Yet I found this wasn't an experience unique to Dunedin. A literature review suggests overseas institutions share similar issues with students clearing out their flats and leaving behind a wake of unwanted flooding goods and other throwaway items. So this infographic shows a range of reuse schemes. Essentially, some are targeted at the flat pack up and setup, which I'll describe more shortly. And then some are just concerned with students moving out of their flats. So say the University of Edinburgh, which is that one up there, they run a scheme really similar to Drop for Good, where students bring their unwanted goods at the end of the year and they're sold for free the following September. So students can pick up their flooding essentials there. Whereas the University of Southampton runs a scheme that's more similar to a curbside collection, and the students can put their goods in bags on the street, and they're collected like that and then distributed amongst charities. So this review quickly rejected my initial idea that drop and shop for good will work in every community. I started to think more broadly about this project and how the guide can help members of different student communities set up a reuse scheme. So the first step that I recommend is to decide what aspects of student waste one will try and tackle. So experts saw clear benefits in schemes targeting both the disposal and consumption of flooding goods. So they're circulating in the same community and there being a huge financial benefit for operating a shop where goods are sold for less than $20. And this financial benefit also preventing cheaper and lesser quality items being purchased in the first place, which is a priority on the waste hierarchy. There were some concerns around running a scheme similar to like a curbside collection, with the amount of goods that aren't ready for resale being almost outweighing those that can be reused. Oh gosh, that went really fast. Okay, we're going to have to quickly skip through some of this stuff, but we're an example of a student institutional partnership. And the guide goes through some benefits to each of these models. We recommend collaboration is a great value to have. Oh, okay, raise zero, we're good. 10 minutes, okay. So collaboration being an awesome value to have at the starting point of a project. But we also really recommend students being involved. They're able to take responsibility for a problem that's owned by us. But more importantly, having a student perspective to help understand the community was a really strong theme throughout interviews and the literature. So I connected with Janet Stevenson's talk on culture and sustainability at the Strengthening Communities Hui in December. I learned that a failure to account for a community's culture can prevent the desired sustainability outcomes. So in the context of a student community, this looks like understanding seasonality, limited transport, budget, all of those which contribute to student flooding waste and our ability to mitigate it. So the Ministry for Environment's guide on best practice communications for waste minimisation sets out some general behaviour change principles, and I've adapted these steps to help someone walk through the process of creating a scheme that appeals to a student community and can achieve behaviour change. Yeah, so setting up the project in a way they want to do something is, I guess, the main aim of this guide. So by always looking at things through the eyes of your community and planning a reuse scheme around the challenges perceived by your students, you're more likely to run an event that supports your students and achieves behaviour change as a result. And this also relates to the communication of your event. So having a comms that is that are best seen by students, and effective engagement is achieved when communication is real and comes from people who are familiar. So it's important to keep your messaging simple, focus on what people can do and what's in it for them. Another key, I guess, concern in interviews was the quality of items received. So it was a deterring factor for some institutions, potentially being burdened with goods that can't be resold. So it's really important to have some clear communication about what can be accepted and potentially things that can't, just to make sure you're receiving items of quality. So space is a big one. So ideally a space is easily accessible and is large enough to store goods over summer. Yet finding a suitable space on campus or near campus is an identified challenge to running a drop for good, particularly in cities, universities and cities. So it would look pretty different, but a reuse scheme can operate despite a lack of space, which this diagram attempts to show. So one solution discussed was a drop for good pop-up, which would have a strong relationship with a community op shop, where students would still bring their donated items to campus, but instead of storing them over summer yourself, an op shop would take these items back, sell them at their own premises, and then on the condition that at the beginning of the next year, they're bringing in different goods to be sold for students. So this would benefit the uni and the students by through an opportunity to reuse and the op shop through the funds generated. And the guide goes through a few other options as well. Cool. Okay, so the convenience and affordability of drop and shop for good were the dominant motivations for event attendees, as according to the survey. But for volunteers, the motivations were more the community and sustainability aspects of the initiative. So the guide recommends that for people wanting to recruit volunteers, that these are the kind of main motivations. to have in their comms for volunteers. Didn't really make sense. Cool. So just quickly, this is kind of, the guide walks through this process, which I've just quickly touched on, of like determining the goals and your potential partnerships, where you'd run it, how to recruit volunteers, and the importance of understanding the community. And at each step, the guide gives prompts to help the reader like think about a drop for good or a reuse scheme in their context. I guess half of what I've been working on as well is a template event plans and a memorandum of understanding, just to help with the, and like health and safety things, just to help with the organisation of the scheme, which is a time-consuming process. Cool. So for the last 5 minutes, we'll shift focus a bit and think about Drop for Good here in Dunedin. I really enjoyed this part of the project, which is about, yeah, I guess what we're running at the moment. So it's an example of a really successful reuse scheme with around 80 tonnes of reusable goods being diverted from landfill each year and hundreds of students being supported and setting up their flats. Yet our survey conducted on the Otago Sustainability Instagram did identify a few physical barriers that limit students' engagement. So the first one being timing. So Drop for Good is run in November over exam time, and 46% of participants said this wasn't quite enough. And so 75% of respondents would love to donate over a continued period over 2 weeks. I guess it would look different, especially in terms of volunteer hours, etc. So something to bear in mind. And this year we ran 48 pickups to students' flats to collect their larger furniture, which was a total of 48, but 23% of participants were also keen to use the service had there been extra bookings. So it would be awesome to expand the number of pickups we're running to further support the donation of couches, etc. Another popular idea, especially to overcome the transport barrier, was the idea of a drop-off service run at Shop for Good. So 88% of participants said they would pay a Pūhau of $10 to $15 to have furniture purchased at Shop for Good delivered to their flat. For those who can't drive a trailer or can't get the couches home for themselves, that further overcomes that barrier. Diversion stats, the value of these statistics were really emphasised in interviews throughout the zero waste sector. They're really valuable in sharing the impact and growing engagement with Drop for Good. So included in the guide are a few benefits and challenges to recording these statistics. But a takeaway, which I really liked, was having them measure in a way that students can relate to it. So that might not necessarily look like tonnage, but yeah, I think it's a cool idea to show the impact in a different way. Cool, so just to finish up. So in a recent article on Drop for Good, Gina Dempster has written that it is the understanding of and connection to the community that makes community-led behaviour change so powerful. And I guess this is the basis of my guide, is this idea of creating a reuse scheme that works for particular student communities. So ultimately, it's understanding of what it means to be a student in Dunedin and a desire to support our student flooding community that makes Drop for Good so successful. And for institutions, I guess I kind of just went over that, but yeah, having that understanding and hofully with some support from the guide, they'll also be able to reduce student flooding waste. And some acknowledgements. Thank you to the Sussie Office team for their support and this opportunity. Shout out to Lizzie for helping me record the podcast yesterday. That's going to be released soon, so if you want to hear this presentation in a different form. And also a huge thank you to Wastebusters for their support for this presentation. Yeah, I really owe you guys a Sunday shift or two. Cool, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Phoebe, and apologies for giving you the 5-minute warning at 10 minutes. I just wanted to see how you dealt with pressure.
Cool. Kia ora koutou, ko Demi tokuinga. My presentation today is through the Sustainability Office, which I work with part-time as a Titikura student lead, but it's an expansion of that as a blueprint of the university's sustainability neighbourhoods to be able to foster sustainable livelihoods through community and innovation with the examples of He Kaika Toitu, He Kaika Ora, and Te Rua Ti. Cool, so today's agenda, we are looking at a bit of background, so the why we're doing this, how we're doing it, what we're doing it for, and where. From there, I'll kind of go into a wee bit of academic connection. So this was a 5-week project, so it didn't delve into as much academia as other projects, but I still want to touch on the importance of that background to why we're doing this. From there, I will go into what I've done more practically and the elements that I've conducted and show you our hub of the sustainability neighbourhood within the Sustainability Otago hub. And then kind of follow on to the future opportunities and projects that I can see come out of this. Cool, so why and how? This is an issue of wanting to live more sustainably as a student is not a new phenomenon. So students have been coming, and I'll bring you, Ray, into this, coming to the Sustainability Office with problems such as, I've always grown up at home with a compost or a garden, and I've always lived more sustainably than when I've come to Dunedin living in a student flat. There was also the issue of having more like-minded people that they were living with in terms of sustainability and the environmental issues. And so there was this desire to learn more sustainable lifestyle practices. And as we're all fairly familiar with, in 2020, there was the COVID-19 situation, which was a challenge, but within this challenge created an opportunity. And a silver lining within this for Dunedin and its students was that uni flats had empty flats without the international students coming in. And so the Sustainability Office took that opportunity and offered a pilot project within some of the flats neighbouring each other that they could put domestic students in with a shared area and create a sustainability neighbourhood. And from here, it's become an exemplar. It is growing with the knowledge spreading beyond with the students that have moved on to other flats and internationally. So for the first 2 years, from 2021 to end of 2022, it was all domestic students. But as COVID kind of subsided to a degree, the international students were allowed back in, and so uni flats went back to their original model of having international students. So now the learnings that we've got are going beyond national level to international, but we're also wanting to see how that can spread to the wider student community domestically. So what are these sustainability neighbourhoods? Well, as I've kind of touched on, in 2021, we had the pilot for He Kaika Toitu, He Kaika Ora, which is the original sustainability neighbourhood, consisting of 20 residents across 4 flats, which share a communal green space with a garden, compost, worm farms, beehives, tunnel house, all the facilities needed to live more sustainably. However, a crucial point of this was to have the sustainability hui's. These varied from each week to bi-weekly to monthly. However, it was consistent that we had a sustainability expert come in to share their knowledge with students to live more practically in a sustainable way. That varied from food waste to how to garden to energy consumption to recycling, the key pillars of sustainability. And as we all know from today's presentations, that sustainability is quite varied in its degrees and its opportunities that it provides. So there is a lot of scope for the experts that we can bring in to teach about sustainability. And the exciting news is that this year we have Te Rua Ti, which is the Sustainability Village Green. This is, originally it was a part of Arana, as their like side housing for their first year residents. It's a, what do you call it? A residential college originally, but it is now Te Rua Ti with roughly, I may be overestimating, but 80 residents across definitely 14 flats, which we're splitting into 3 neighbourhoods. As we found with the original neighbourhood, that 20 residents was kind of the optimum amount of students to be sharing the connection and sustainability practices together to kind of build off each other and know your neighbour, you know, to be able to connect and learn and grow together. So we divided these 14 flats into 3 neighbourhoods, which we'll see on the next slide, but we gave them and enabled them the same facilities to partake in these sustainability activities and practices, and the sustainability hui's will continue, but in a more frequently between the neighbourhoods. So they will join all together as kind of a village, sustainability village, to learn together and then go off into their neighbourhoods to do the activation hui's and connect together in smaller, more practical numbers. So for a bit of context on where these are, so you can get a visual idea, we've got He Kaika Toitu, He Kaika Ora, which I've got a Google Map street view. So we've got down here, this is Great King Street, and down here is St David Street. Both of these flats that you can see are part of the neighbourhood, and then there's a further 2 flats beyond that with a garden that they all share. You can see the garden above that from different angles, some of us in there doing a wee get together hui, and then we've also now got Te Rua Ti, which is, I've got a Google Maps bird's eye view of that, and then Ray has very cleverly created a wee visual diagram of how the village splits off into its neighbourhoods with each of the flats. It's got a communal area with a wee basketball court. We've got veggie beds that have just been put in. We've got a large tunnel house and more to be added in addition to that as the students move in for this year. So a very brief academic overview of how this connects to academia would be one stat that I found quite interesting and very relevant is that globally 70% of our greenhouse gas emissions come from cities. So there's a very clear need for sustainable urban development in order to mitigate and adapt to these climate events and future events. So grassroots innovations such as the sustainability neighbourhoods and community action which happens within those are often overlooked innovation towards sustainability and sustainable development. However, they do provide a very crucial role towards the betterment of cities and urban spaces, as well as reducing these greenhouse gas emissions. So they provide environmentally responsible citizens, they create community engagement, lifelong learning, and underscoring through some of the hui's, etc., and facilities provided urban food systems. Cool. So the practical element, what I spent majority of my time doing across these 5 weeks is creating the hub, and fingers crossed this works. Yeah, it says it's loading on my screen. Maybe not. Oh, there we go. So this is just taking us to the hub. Within the sustainability office, we've got the neighborhoods. Oh, it's working on my screen.
Just check with Inga at EV that we're viewing the sustainability at Otago rather than the PowerPoint.
Kia ora, Ray. Yes, we can see the sustainability neighbourhood.
Awesome, thank you.
Cool, thank you. So this is the hub. Hopefully I can get used to this computer.
Oh, navigate, you tell me where to go. You talk and I'll...
So I just want to scroll down.
You're on different pages. So you want... Scroll in there, is that good?
Thank you. So our Kiwi slogan is this student flatting experience that you're here for without the environmental impact. And we've got a bit of an overview, and we will add our experts so that people can know a bit about those that are taking the hui. I'll just quickly go into the overview. It is kind of summing up what I've just explained about the who, what, why, etc. But it goes into our what, our why, what to expect, so that residents coming internationally can know before coming what they're getting into, what they can expect when within the neighbourhood, and what they'll see when they get here. So we've got our monthly hui, a bit about that, and we've just added our goals and learning reflections. So a bit of self-reflection of why you're actually doing this, what you want out of it, what you think you can contribute, and a bit more longevity in their view of why. Cool, so we've also got your whānau of all of us that are involved, quick tips, and this can actually be beneficial to any student. There are still a lot of students that don't know how to recycle properly, that don't know the bus routes or where to get a bike from, or the most sustainable places to eat or shop. So each of these wee tabs have a bit of info. Cool. So I'll just do a wee overview of semester 1. So we just have a wee example of the huis and the outlay of each month. So we're going to have a monthly theme of a sustainability issue or topic. So if we go into February, it feels all backwards. There we go, February. So this is coming up within the next 2 weeks, where we'll do a welcome and a kind of an overview of what to expect. I am your expert, not that expert, but I do have some grounds as to what to expect when coming to Dunedin as a student, some sustainability awareness of what goes on around here, and then this is going to be what we get for each expert that comes in. So we bio about them, and then The new addition is going to be a podcast as well as or a reel. So an easy, quick, interactive thing that tells you a bit about that topic and can expand beyond the community or the neighbourhood for other students to learn, and a bit more benefit for those experts that are coming in to allow them to kind of have something that their time and energy is going into and can last for longer than the hour of the hui. Things happening, so we've got a little outline of our huis, what to expect, as well as each month has its garden to-dos with what to plant, what to sow, and what to maintain. Yeah, I will leave it there. But it's probably going to take a bit too much to get back to the slide again, wouldn't it? Oh, yeah. That one? Or that one? Cool. Future opportunities and projects. So I will very quickly skim over this, but some opportunities that we have seen to be beneficial for the neighbourhoods going on would be an impact assessment of kind of a study of the carbon reduction or cancellation of living within a sustainability neighbourhood. So obviously as an international student, you come with quite a few emissions by travelling here. And it would be interesting to see what kind of impact that has towards mitigating those emissions that you've come here with, and obviously in future with how you're going to continue your life in sustainable practices. Secondly, an annual report similar to what we've done for Te Oraka, where you can see the progress, the impact, and the learnings, which are an important resource to have in order to grow as well as share with other landlords, universities, and other facilities. So the last one being physical representation and oti-poti. We want this to be able to be accessible for students. We want pamphlets potentially for landlords, and we could even create likes of badges similar to Green Your Scene, where residents can kind of see themselves stepping up in their learnings and kind of see their growth through different milestones. Yeah, that's me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Demi. So could we have all of the speakers so far come and grab a seat up here? We'll just give the EV guys a chance to pan the camera around to pick us up here. Might get you to grab the other microphone, and then if there's others in the room that have a question. So 3 fascinating topics: modern slavery, drop for good, and the sustain neighbourhood. Quite contrasting, yeah, and different takes on sustainability, but all contributing towards that thriving future that we're looking for in Pūhau ana te rā. I'm going to open it up to the room. First of all, who has a question for anybody on the panel? And I also want to recognize that Demi's grandmother is here. Yeah, yeah. So, and I know from last year you've some really good questions.
I'm going to kick off with the first question just to warm up the crowd, because I'm super excited to hear that your scheme, as Demi just explained, is expanded into the second neighbourhood, or at least 3 more neighbourhoods. It's so exciting to see that. And as a mother of a a now second year male student who's moved into a flat of 5 boys. I'm really keen to encourage him in this direction as well. So I've been trying to explain that they're getting this new recycling system and they have to do these things. But I'm concerned that the wheels are going to fall off with these boys trying to maintain the organic, little thing that they're going to have on their kitchen bench, and it's going to get stinky and they're going to give up. So I'm really trying to stimulate this. But my question is, and maybe Ray can explain it a little too, if he has this at his fingertips, but has there been any kind of exit interviews done with the former students in the neighbourhoods to see, how it went for them, what they thought? Would they have done it again if they, would they live in the neighbourhood if they had the opportunity to carry on, that sort of thing? Could you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, really cool question, and it would be really interesting to have each year we consistently do this. I am actually a past resident, so I have a bit of insider knowledge, which is very helpful within my role. But I think last year we also had it was a geography paper, did a few surveys and interviews with residents to see their sense of place and belonging within the neighbourhood, which covered a few of those questions of whether they would continue what they can see to change or better within the neighbourhood. And that was a presentation on its own with that class, which was very interesting and insightful for us. Yeah.
Similar thing, but with global studies students the year before. So it's students studying the students, and that idea of the living lab, all feeding into it. Good answer.
Okay, any other questions from the crowd or on Zoom, which I should be probably having a look at too, should I?
I think we have to log in separately.
Okay. Jeff, I don't know if you're there. Can you help with just having a scan, and if you can see a Zoom question, let me know. Would that be all right if you're still there?
No problem, Caroline. There's no questions at the moment.
Great, thanks. Hold on.
I was very interested on the slavery. That was what made you study that?
So I'm a law and business student at the moment, and I actually encountered it in a couple of my papers. So in employment law earlier this year, we started to learn about it and how there was this legislation coming in. And then I also learned about it in business ethics, and it kind of just seemed like a perfect crossover of my degrees, and a segue into the sustainability space, which is something I'm interested in as well. So yeah, I guess I kind of started learning about it at uni, and it just interested me.
Oh, that's very interesting, because with the we're farming people, and I see a lot of the cow farmers and the employed people they're using a lot from Tibet. We've got quite a community around us, and they're lovely, lovely people. The ones that work for our cow farmer, he is so good to his workers, and they have a community garden going now. And but a lot of them, it is really just slavery, you see. So it was quite interesting.
Yeah, no, it's interesting as well that there are actually cases that happen within our shores and in New Zealand, because the discussion around modern slavery and getting that legislation in and those international obligations has kind of led us to assume that it's something confined to offshore. But there are, as you said, quite a few cases of, I think even in 2020, we had our first human trafficking case, yes, where someone was found guilty of human trafficking. So yeah, it definitely happens on shore, and it's good that we're getting onto it.
Yes, it's very good. They have improved a lot, but they still do need to improve more.
There's a lot to do. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for your questions.
Just following up on that, you mentioned percentages, but I don't think it showed the scale of what you were doing. Yes. So how many suppliers did you email out, and how many did you get responses from? Because it was a quite small percentage, but it's actually quite a significant number.
Yeah. So there were 9,412 suppliers emailed. A few emails had changed, so there was some bounced emails and that kind of thing. But if you think about even one supplier in our system, over the scale of a year, which is the data we were going through, has many transactions. And so, yeah, it was a huge amount of data going through. Even 1.7% of the total cost was thousands of rows in Excel at least. Yeah, so it was a very large scale, even though it looks like a drop in the ocean. We got a lot of really good data and research on it. Yeah, thank you.
I've got a question for Phoebe, and I think it applies to all of the presentations from the first three of you. As a university showing some leadership and hopefully things that other tertiary institutions can pick up on the procurement space, other spaces. But Phoebe, in your conversations with other waste practitioners, did you see how Drop for Good could be applied outside of a tertiary context?
It's a really good question. I guess I didn't really think about outside of a tertiary context, but even like a scheme like how I was talking about the Drop for Good pop-up, like that could definitely work for another business, or I guess even a school if they were, I don't know, had extra chairs or that kind of stuff. So hopefully the guide itself is broad enough that it could be picked up from somewhere else other than a uni. But no, not the most of my conversations were around the tertiary sphere, but now you say it definitely could be related, I think.
Yeah, direct to you, Phoebe. Just going back to my time as a student and a male, do you feel there's a bit of a gender bias and uptake in the area that you were looking at?
So for like a Drop for Good and Shop for Good, most people attending, is that what you're meaning? It's a really good question. I mean, potentially at Te Oraka, the shop that I'm working at throughout the year, we do get more females, but not really at Drop for Good. We definitely had, quite a few guys come in and drop off their stuff. And I think the appeal for Shop for Good and it being affordable, that just brings all students from everywhere, flooding all different years. So not really, no, not that I've noticed, but that's definitely something that we could think about, yeah.
I did a round with the van doing some of the pickups this year. Yeah, so, and it was a fairly good split of gender that were, as I was knocking on the door, it was a real mix. So probably more mixed than the rest of our activities through the year, I would say.
A question for me on that topic is just reflecting on my own son setting up his flat, because he's based in Dunedin, he's got access to things, you know, uncles and aunties with couches or desks or whatever. But for students from out of town, they're less likely, you know, they don't have those connections. And so do you find that you often have students from out of town being more likely to engage with Drop for Good, or, you know, because I think there'll be differences there, right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, because so many of our students, I was talking to Craig about this, so many of us are from out of town. So I guess in a lot of events, most people attending are from further apart. But I think, yeah, that is the appeal. If you're from Dunedin, you could bring your desk from home. But if you're from Wellington or Wanaka, it's more difficult. So yeah, I mean, it's probably a fair assumption to make.
Yeah, I have to say, I looked in my cupboard the other day and several of my kitchen appliances had disappeared, strangely, and just gone down to the flat. So yeah, I've got to go and retrieve them. Any more questions before we break for morning tea? What is the time? We've got 5 more minutes. Yeah.
I've got another one for Demi. It was extremely interesting to see how much of the greenhouse emissions came from the cities. Now I'm going to go home and tell my farmers, it's not you. What do you think about that?
I feel like you stitched me up a wee bit here, Granny. I feel like it's in terms of the scale of people. So obviously there's a lot more people living in urban spaces than rurally. So the number of emissions with the amount of people would be higher. I
And
think,
less cows.
yeah. Good question, really.
This is also for Demi. So you talked about how you had the original sustainability neighborhood and then there's a new one that's been established. Were there learnings that came from the first one that went into the design of the second that were done differently?
For sure. I feel like the structure and capacity of what we do for the hui's, we learned a lot through the experts that we'd had in the past, and we are having them back again because of how beneficial we found it for the residents and how much the residents enjoyed it. In terms of changing things, I don't feel like we've changed much of the original concept. There's a lot of positive learnings that we've continued, such as like the size of the resident population per neighborhood and the gardening and how we facilitate that. I think, a good learning was the addition of the reflections and goal setting, which is yet to be understood how beneficial that will be. But I think to have the students reflect on why they're there and what they want out of it and what they can give as well will be quite beneficial, as we haven't had that so directly in the past. Yeah.
Before we did anything to the new neighbourhood, we actually spent an afternoon down there with the residents from the other one and gave them all a map of the area to say, what would you do if you were designing it? And pretty much we've taken their ideas, and that's how the new one is. So we just cut out the middleman, and asked them to design it, and that's where the learnings come through.
And Ray, how do you advertise the communities to new students? Do you have a wait list for these 80 places in the flats, or how do people find out about it?
So when they're applying for uni flats as an international student, there's a tick box on there and some information on that website.
Okay, and for the domestic students, if they want to go into uni flats, they would have the same.
Yeah, so if they were applying to be a Kiwi host
Yeah.
in uni flats, they would see it there.
Okay, great. I'm thinking about my daughter who's in year 13. She's probably going to be keen for this.
I've got a question for each of you, and just a quick response. If you were to pass the baton of your project to someone else doing a project next year, what would you get them to look into to take your project to the next step?
I'm going to build off what Craig asked me before. Looking at maybe a reuse scheme in context other than universities, I think could be really cool. So, yeah.
I mean, I'm hoping the legislation will be in next year. Here's to hoping. But if it is, then probably building off that. If not, doing a more detailed analysis of the overall risk now that the actual kind of supply chain will be mapped. Yeah.
I feel like out of the options that I kind of quickly went through would probably be the impact assessment and getting quantitative data, qualitative numbers, quantitative, for a more scientific understanding of the costs and benefits of living more sustainably. I think that would be really beneficial.
Great. Well, the time's ticked along. I think as long as there are no further questions, we'll stop for...
Caroline, it's Jeff here. We do have one question online if you have a moment.
Yes, please do. Could you read it out for us, Jeff?
I certainly can. The question is from Catherine Stewart, and it's to Rebecca regarding the modern slavery paper. The possible ways forward as to how to deal with modern slavery were interesting. Do you have any thoughts on which might be the best option for the Uni of Otago?
Yeah, sure. Well, for the time being, we're going to be prioritizing. So we'll be mapping out risk based on high level of risk, medium level of risk, low level of risk, and we'll be prioritizing those suppliers that are categorized as a high level of risk, dependent on our expenditure with them, the country that they're in, and the industry that they're in. Because we are such a large organization and we have so many not only direct suppliers, thousands, but those suppliers have suppliers and those suppliers have suppliers. So we're looking at thousands and thousands and thousands of suppliers, and the next step will be prioritizing those that could be categorized as high risk and checking them out. Yeah.
Is that option 3 or is that option 4?
Well, that's going to pretty much happen regardless with the legislation. So it's 2 and 3 at this stage. Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Can I just confirm with that Catherine Stewart is mum? Yes. That's mum. We'll get mum and grannies asking questions, difficult ones.
Fantastic. Love to see the whānau support. Okay, so we'll stop now for a kai and comfort stop, and we're going to reconvene here at 11 o'clock. So those on Zoom, you can take a pause as well, and we'll see you back online shortly.